Okay, hello everyone and welcome again to my home here in New Zealand. This is webinar number 18. I've been doing a series of webinars during the lockdown period and now we're entering into level 3 here in New Zealand. Hopefully we're getting past the worst of this virus, so I hope wherever you're watching that you're safe as well. So as you could probably see on the introduction screen, today we're going to cover listening. We're going to cover the third listening. Sorry, one second. Just make sure this is working. Okay, just wanted to make sure that if you cannot hear me, please let me know on Facebook. So at any time during this webinar, you can actually try and send me a message. Hopefully I'll see it via the GRAID Facebook page. So this is webinar number 17. This is the third listening. And just like to explain what's going to happen looking ahead. On Tuesday, there'll be another free webinar, which will be on the fourth listening in this series. What we're doing with this listening is we're doing one of the practice listening tests from the GRAID site. So the listening tests for IELTS always have 4 sections. So we've been covering each of those sections in each of these different webinars. Looking ahead, what's going to happen is we'll continue to have a free webinar every Tuesday. On Thursdays, there will be a free webinar for all grade.com subscribers, right? So Thursday is a general webinar for anyone to watch, whether it be on Facebook or on YouTube. And then on Thursday, that is the free webinar for grade.com subscribers. On Sundays, because we have had, by the end of Tuesday, we will have made 18 webinars. So on Sundays, we're going to replay those webinars. And you can also contact someone from the site on Sundays as you watch the replay and ask live questions about any of the replays. So hopefully you'll be able to get some benefit from all of those different webinars. Anyway, let's continue on to the listening test. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through to the GRAID site. Okay, so hopefully what you can see, I'll just make sure that is the case. Hopefully what you can see at the moment is the GRAID website. Right, so I'm on the dashboard at the moment and we're going to practice listening. So I scroll down and then I just click on tests. Now, if you have watched the other webinars on listening, section 1 was on skydiving. Then we looked at one about complaints. The first one was a hotel check-in, then it was skydiving. Now we're going to look at one today, which is about complaints. So let's click on this. Okay, so just to reiterate, just to repeat, the listening test here, it says 40 minutes. The actual test that you take on test day, it can vary slightly, but there are 4 sections. Then at the end of the test, you will have 10 minutes where you can transfer your scribbled down notes from your question paper across to your answer paper. This is the big difference between the listening test and the reading test, right? So don't get mixed up because in the reading test, you have to fill out your answer sheet during the 60 minutes. With the listening test, you have those extra 10 minutes at the end of the test where you can transfer your answers. So today, we're going to work on section 3. And as has been the case with all of the other webinars on listening, the focus is going to be on making predictions. So at this point, I'm just going to go across and we're going to listen to the narrator as you would in the test. And usually the narrator will give you an idea about what you're about to listen to. So let's see what we have today.
Section 3. You will hear a conversation between 2 university students about a presentation they have to give. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25.
Okay, as the narrator said, we're going to listen to students talking about the presentation they have to do for university. So, as I mentioned, for section 1, it's almost always a dialogue for a general situation. The one that we covered with this practice test was somebody booking a driving test. Then section 2 is almost always a monologue, right? So last time we heard the skydiver instructor for section 2. Today we're going to be listening to a dialogue. So more than one person, and they're talking about the university assignment that they have to do. So we can see from some of the clues here that the assignment must have something to do with a role play. And we know that one of the characters that we're going to listen to, her name is Paula, right? So this is where it can be very helpful if you are aware of some names which are commonly used in the West. Paula being a female name. So if you are able to identify people's names, this is going to be helpful because then you can identify the speaker easily. Paula is a female name. So the same question is about Neil. Neil is a male name or a boy's name. So there's actually 3 speakers. I think the narrator may have mentioned 2, but there are definitely 3 speakers. And the third speaker is another male name, Matt, right? So we have a female named Paula and 2 males, one named Neil and one named Matt, right? So the key question, the key word that we're going to be listening for is role plays, right? So I would suggest that questions 21 to 22 are going to be easier questions. Hopefully we're going to hear that keyword role play. The difficulty will be to identify who is speaking, right? So that's why it's really important to identify the characters and, if you can, identify the agenda. You'll have to listen carefully as they talk together. So 3 speakers that we've seen so far. Question 24, which role does Paula not suggest for the third person in the role play? So there's another one. We tripped up on one of these nearly last time. This is one of those difficult questions where we're asked to identify which answer is not correct, right? So which role does Paula not suggest for the third person in the role play? And again, hopefully we're going to hear some of these different words. But as a prediction, customer, well, we can also think about synonyms if we have time. Customer, we might hear the word shopper, perhaps, right? So manager and supervisor, perhaps there are fewer synonyms for those. So maybe we'll hear those words spoken. Then we go down to question 25. And again, hopefully we're going to hear numbers. Numbers are usually easier to identify. How long does each person need to talk for? We can assume that they need to talk during the role play. Maybe the lecturer has given them a time frame. Hopefully we're going to hear the expressions 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 6 minutes. But I would also be thinking in the back of my mind, there are different ways of talking about time, right? So for example, 2 minutes, a very common expression in English is a couple of minutes, right? So 2 means a couple. So always think about what you might hear. This means you're making predictions. And we can see, looking ahead, that we have a different set of questions from 26 onwards. This is where usually the listening sections are broken up into 2 parts. So we're going to go ahead. Again, I'm a cheat because I have the script here in front of me. And the reason for that is so that I can repeat back any parts of the listening which you found difficult, right? So, and I'll do that naturally as we progress through this listening test. So let's carry on. I'm going to stop and review each answer as I find it. So basically what you're seeing here is how I would answer this test, and I'm going to provide some commentary for you. So the pause in sound you hear at the moment, this is just, as the narrator said, you have a little bit of time to get ready. So this is the precious time in the actual test where you just have to, as quickly as you can, read those questions and try to predict.
As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Matt.
Okay, now we have heard our first speaker, and hopefully you were able to hear the speaker say his name, right? So I've mentioned in the past that in the IELTS test, you're likely to encounter a few different types of accents. The most common one that I've come across is the British accent, but last time we also heard an American skydiving instructor. Today we have another Australian speaker, which is also a common accent that you will hear. His name is Matt, right? So the first speaker is Matt. And if you can put a name to a voice, this is going to be so important.
Nice to meet you. I'm Paula.
Okay, here is our female, and her name, as we can hopefully recognize from the question paper, her name is Paula.
Hi, Matt and Paula. I'm Neil. Nice to meet you both too.
Okay, there's our second male speaker, Neil, right? So I'm going to actually replay that little bit just because this is so important. And in the test, identifying the speakers in this type of dialogue where names are in the questions is absolutely vital. So I'm going to replay that for you.
So have either of you...
As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Matt.
Nice to meet you. I'm Paula.
Hi, Matt and Paula. I'm Neil. Nice to meet you both too.
So have either of you ever had to do a role play in front of a class before?
Okay, here is our first mention of the keyword role play. So we have the speaker, Matt. Matt is asking Paul or Neil if they have ever done a role play in front of a class before. So let's see who answers that question from Matt.
No, this will be a first for me.
Okay, so here's Paula's voice, obviously. Paula said, no, this will be a first for me. Now, this is a really tricky expression, and I want to break this down for you. Some of you may jump to the answer 1 because you heard the word first. But I'm going to repeat very carefully what she said. No, this will be a first for me, right? So obviously they have not done the role play yet. They are talking about a role play that they have to do in the future for their class. So she said that the role play will be the first one for her. So that means at the moment, she has not done any, right? Hopefully you can understand that. Make sure that's come up as none. Yes, so Paula has not done a role play before. This will be, in the future when she does it, that this will be the first role play for her. Okay.
What about you, Neil?
Okay, so then she is asking Neil, right? And if this is the first webinar for listening, which you have watched, the questions on the question paper are in the same order as the listening. Again, I'm yet to come across a listening test for IELTS where the questions are not in the order of the listening track, right? So this means for question 22, the answer is coming up because Paula just asked Neil if he has done a role play. What about you, Neil? So let's listen.
I had to do a role play in my Japanese class in my last year of high school.
Okay, as Neil said, he had to do a role play in his Japanese class in his last year of high school. So obviously the answer there, Neil has done 1, right? So in his Japanese class at high school, he had to do a role play. Now, you might be lucky and get these 3 type of easier questions on your IELTS test. But again, the first one was quite tricky, but hopefully we're on a roll now. And this means that we can expect Matt to provide his information soon.
But I have never done one in English before.
This is a first for me, but I think it should be fun.
Okay, now here, it's not easy, is it? Matt said, this is a first for me, right? So very, very similar expression to what we heard from Paula. So this is a first, right? So again, they have not done the role play yet. So this means that Matt has also not done a role play before, right? So while the easy thing here was identifying the keywords and finding the information, I think the difficulty here is processing or the comprehension of what has been spoken, right? So I can understand how many students could get question 21 and question 23 wrong, right? So, but to reiterate, for Paula and for Matt, this will be their first role plays. Okay, let's move on to 24. Now, these are the kind of words that I'd be hoping to hear. Customer, manager, supervisor. Again, a synonym for customer may be shopper. So let's listen, and just, this is where the difficulty in the test is. You need to keep scanning the question paper and listening at the same time. You only hear it once. So which role does Paula not suggest for the third person in the role play?
Yeah, I think so too. Well, maybe we should try and choose our scenario.
Yeah, so the teacher said we have to do our role play on dealing with a customer complaint.
That's right. But the problem is that most customer complaints usually involve just two people, the customer and someone like a shop assistant.
Yes, that's normally the case. So who could the third person be?
Okay, so we've just heard Neil ask a question. So who could the third person be, right? So maybe we're going to hear Paula speak next, right? So because what we've heard is third person, right? Keywords, who could the third person be? Let's see what is spoken next.
What about a manager or a supervisor?
Okay, so here's Paula, the female speaker, and she said, what about a manager or a supervisor, right? So again, which role does Paula not suggest for the third person? That answer is customer. Paula does not suggest that the customer is the third person.
Perhaps the customer could ask to speak to the manager or the supervisor.
Now this is where, again, it's tricky. What Paula moves on to say is perhaps the customer could speak to the manager or the supervisor. But I'm going to replay this bit for you because I understand this is possibly confusing.
That's a great idea, and that seems like a typical situation. But we still need to keep the role of the store assistant involved.
Ask to speak to the manager. What about
And someone like a shop assistant.
Okay, so we're back to Neil speaking. I just want to replay this for you because I think this is definitely a very tricky one.
Yes, that's normally the case. So who could the third person be?
Okay, so there we have Neil again ask, who could the third person be?
what about a manager or a supervisor?
Okay, and there again, just for your benefit, hopefully you absolutely get it now. The first two names, or the first two roles that Paula suggests are manager and supervisor, right? So she does not suggest customer as an answer to Neil's question. Okay, moving on. And hopefully we're going to hear some information about how long each person, Matt, Neil, and Paula, have to speak for.
Perhaps the customer could ask to speak to the manager or the supervisor.
That's a great idea, and that seems like a typical situation. But we still need to keep the role of the store assistant involved in the role play, because the teacher said that all three of us need to have reasonably equal parts.
How long does the whole role play need to be?
Okay, so we hear the key phrase, how long, right? So Neil asks another question, how long does the whole role play need to be? So this is where your ears should be pricking up, and that means you should be listening really carefully because hopefully the answer is coming up.
6 minutes, and each person should talk for approximately 2 minutes.
Okay, this is absolutely an easier question. The information is given very clearly. Now, perhaps you may have jumped to 6 minutes, but I'm going to repeat. How long does the whole role play need to be? This was Neil's question. Then Matt answered 6 minutes. And each person should talk for approximately 2 minutes. Right, so there we have it. In total, 6 minutes. Each person needs to talk for 2 minutes in their role play. Now, what will happen is we'll hear the remainder of the dialogue before we take a little break. I'm just going to let it play through.
That's right. Well, how about this? A customer wants to return a product, but he or she doesn't have a receipt. The store assistant could work on a service desk, and he or she explains that the customer has to have a receipt in order to return the product.
That sounds like a good idea. So then the customer demands to talk to the manager?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, we're about to take a break. The narrator's gonna tell us that you get some more time to read ahead. Now, even though we had answered all of the questions from 21 through to 25, we still need to listen really carefully to all parts of the dialogue because we need to understand the entire dialogue. We don't want to lose track of what's happening, right? So let's listen on. The narrator's going to tell us that we get some more time.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so usually the amount of time you get in the actual test is about 20 seconds or so, maybe 30 if you're lucky. We're going to take more time than that because I want to help you understand how these questions and answers work. So another very common question type, we just did multiple choice, and we've done this one in the past as well. Here we're going to fill in the gaps, right? So now, again, we're told that we can fill in the gaps using 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words, but not 4, right? So 1, 2, or 3 words, that's possible. What we are not told is that we have to use the words that we hear. But for most answers, you are just going to dictate to fill in the gaps. But occasionally, you're going to have to transform the grammar. Now, I'm going to give you a warning, I guess is the best word. I'm just going to tell you that for 3 of these questions, you're going to have to transform the grammar. Now, I'm telling you this because these are really good examples of where you need to transform the grammar in order to fill in the gaps. If you're not sure what I mean by transform the grammar, this means that you have to change what you hear to fill in the gaps. So you're not going to always write down the exact words that you hear. Sometimes you may come across instructions where they tell you to fill in the gaps using the information that you hear, but we're not told this in this case. So this means that it's more important that we have grammatically correct answers. So that can be really tricky because you're having to listen and change the words slightly to make your answers grammatically correct. So I just wanted to tell you that so that you can practice this if you're watching right now at home. So let's make some predictions. In the past, Matt worked on, right? So now this is where I would look really carefully at the preposition. And I'd be thinking, well, what type of things do people work on, right? So people work on teams, for example. People work in stores, but on has a different set of collocations. So we use on with different words. One expression that comes to mind is on a team. So I'm not really sure what the answer is going to be, but the answer must connect with the preposition on. In other words, it has to be grammatically correct. That collocation, that word pairing has to be correct. So 27, Paula wants the role of the customer because, right? So now we can only have 3 words, so I'm not sure, but it's going to be a very short explanation. And I would be listening really carefully, obviously to Paula speaking, but anything about the role of the customer. To me, customer or possibly shopper will be the key word that I'm listening for there. Okay, Paula tried to return a jug. Now, if you're not sure what a jug is, then we know that this is related to shopping, right? So a jug obviously must be some kind of item, right? So Paula tried to return a jug something ago. So to me, what's missing here must be a time phrase, right? So by time phrase, it could be weeks, months, or years, right? So hopefully that's the information we're going to hear to fill in 28. Two more. Paula's receipt, right? So we heard that word receipt before the narrator told us we had a break. So the receipt is what you get when you buy something, that little slip of paper. Paula's receipt was destroyed. So I would be thinking of reasons or ways that receipts could be destroyed. Maybe there was a fire, maybe there was water damage, for example. And here, the manager of Paula buying the jug. Right, so this one is really hard to predict, but perhaps we know that this must be an action, right? So that's about as much prediction we can make here. The manager must have done some kind of action, right? So here we're going to be listening for the keyword manager, and what action did the manager do in relation to Paula buying the jug? So let's go back and we're going to finish off the rest of this section.
Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, well, I actually used to work on a service desk.
Now, if you couldn't remember, the speaker is Matt. That's why I'm telling you again how important it is to recognize the names of the speakers, right? So that's where I'd be putting a lot of my attention at the beginning of this listening, is just identifying these speakers. That speaker was Matt, right? So I'm going to repeat what he says.
So maybe that would be a good...
Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, well, I actually used to work on a service desk.
Okay, so here we have Matt speaking, and in the past, Matt worked on a, so we need to put a service desk. Now, perhaps this may be a difficult phrase or an unknown phrase for some viewers. A service desk is usually in a larger store, and it's the part of it's usually located next to the checkouts. It's where you would go if you want to return a product, or you have a question, or you need information about your shopping, or something if you have a problem with something you've bought, that is the service desk. Similar to an information desk, but often they're going to deal with returned products, right? So if that's a new expression, it doesn't really matter as long as you heard the three words, a service desk. Obviously, if you're familiar with that expression, then it's going to be easier for you to listen. But anyway, let's listen on. And now we're listening. We need information about Paula. Paula wants the role of customer. Why is this?
So maybe that would be a good role for me to take.
That's okay by me. I don't mind what role I take. Do you have any preferences, Paula?
Okay, so we've just heard Neil and Matt talking about the roles that they're going to take. And Neil is very helpful. He's just asked another question. And he asked Paula if she has any preferences about the role that she has in their role play. So let's listen, because hopefully we have our answer.
Well, I like shopping, so I can be the customer if you like.
Okay, now, again, this test is by no means easy. Here, the information for the answer is actually in front of the keywords that we're listening for. I'm going to put the answer in straight away. So two things are happening here. Okay, I'm going to repeat exactly what she said. Well, here was the question from Neil. Neil asked, do you have any preferences, Paula? Right, so the preferences are about the role that she wants to take in the role play. Here is exactly what Paula said. Well, I like shopping. So that is the answer, but we cannot answer it this way, can we, right? Because I like shopping. Paula wants the role of the customer because I like shopping. That's obviously grammatically incorrect. And this is exactly what I mean about having to transform the grammar. We need to transform the grammar to talk about Paula. So Paula is she. And then she like? No. I like, you like, they like, we like, she likes. We have to make sure our subject-verb agreement is correct. So a really tricky question, because the information we're listening for actually comes before the keywords that we are hoping to hear. So, well, I like shopping, so I can be the customer if you like, right? So maybe we were listening out for that word customer, but the actual information we needed to complete the sentence was before the keyword. So we always have to be listening so carefully, right? So if you weren't able to get that one at home, you'll often find in the IELTS test that some questions are more difficult than others. So in my opinion, question 27 is probably the most difficult one amongst all of these 10 questions. So if you got it wrong, probably a lot of other students would as well. Okay, question 28. Again, we're looking for information about Paula. Hopefully the keyword that we're going to hear is jug.
You seem like a really nice person, but I wonder if you are good at arguing, because I imagine the customer being quite argumentative in this role play.
Well, I have actually tried to return a product without any receipt before, so I get...
Okay, now a keyword that we heard is return, right? So already I'm thinking, okay, the answer for 28 must be somewhere around here, right? So Paula just said, well, I've actually tried to return a product without a receipt before, right? So hopefully all of the answers are going to come up soon, but here is Paula talking about returning a product. Let's listen on.
Guess I have experience with this role.
Really? What happened?
Well, I bought this small electric jug a couple of years ago.
Okay, we heard the word jug, and then here is our time phrase, because Paula said ago, right? So jug and ago. Now, again, this is a tricky question. A couple of years. Now, don't worry, this is not the correct answer. If you're looking at home saying that's 4 words, well done, right? So this is not the correct answer because we're only able to fill in the blanks using 3, 2, or 1 word, right? So here we have 4 words. This is not possible. So a couple of years means 2, right? So I'll just check, make sure there are no questions. Now I know in the past I've had questions about alternative answers. Here, the only answer I can think of is 2 years. If you did dictate a couple of years, that would be wrong because that is 4 words. So again, a really tricky one. Definitely 27 and 28 are 2 of the trickiest ones, probably in this whole test. And hopefully now you can see what I mean by transforming the grammar. Let's move on to 29.
So I took it home, filled it up with water and switched it on. I left the kitchen while it was boiling, but when I came back, there was water all over the bench top.
Okay, so we're getting some hints here, right? So Paula bought her jug. She used the jug. When she came back from having turned on the jug, there was water all over the bench. Straight away, I would be thinking maybe the answer to 29 has something to do with water. Let's see if that is confirmed.
Did the jug have a leak?
Yes, but I had left the receipt on the bench top and the water had completely destroyed it.
Okay, and here it is confirmed, right? Again, in this instance, as with previous questions we've covered, what is written on the question paper is not exactly what's spoken in the listening track. There's a lot of comprehension that takes place in this test. Now, Paula's receipt was destroyed. If you watch the webinar on passive voice, this is an example of passive voice. So we have the subject, Paula's receipt. then we have the be auxiliary, was, then we have the past participle destroyed. If you remember what an agent is, we use the agent as the actual part in the sentence which completes, that does the action, right? So what destroyed Paula's receipt? Water destroyed Paula's receipt. That would be active voice. But because it's passive, we need to use the preposition by, and that tells us the agent. The agent is water. Possibly, I think the water would be an alternative perhaps, but it's not really necessary. I think probably the best answer would be, or the most natural answer would be by water, right? So again, if you put the water, you might be okay, but I think by water is the best answer. So I'm going to repeat what she actually said so you can see how it's transformed. So Neil asked her a question. Did the jug have a leak? Here's Paula. Yes, but I had left the receipt on the bench top and the water had completely destroyed it. All right, so, okay, hopefully you were able to transform that grammar using passive voice. The last one, hopefully we're going to hear Paula talking about manager.
Well, that's not your fault. So were you able to return it?
Eventually, but at first the store assistant said I had to have a receipt. I told them what had happened and it seemed like he didn't believe me, so I got a little angry.
That's understandable. So how did you prove your purchase?
Well, I talked to the manager and he was able to find a picture of me buying the jug on.
Okay, so here we heard the key phrase buying the jug. Hopefully you also heard the word manager. I'm going to repeat back exactly what Paula said. So, so Neil asked her the question. So how did you prove your purchase? Here is Paula's reply. Well, I talked to the manager and he was able to find a picture of me buying the jug, right? So I'm going to actually play that as Paula said it as well.
On the store security.
Did you prove your purchase?
Well,
so here's Paula talking.
I talked to the manager and he was able to find a picture of me buying the jug on the store security camera.
Okay, so remember Paula didn't have her receipt because her receipt had been destroyed by water, but she wanted to return her faulty jug. And what the manager did, the manager, because this is talking about the past, and here we have to transform it to past tense, found a picture, right? So again, actually, to be honest, there's a lot of difficult questions in this particular section, right? So a lot of grammar transformation. Paula is talking about a past event, right? Something that actually happened to her in real life. And in this case, she wanted to return a jug, but she didn't have her receipt because it had been destroyed by water. But luckily, very kind manager found a picture of Paula buying the jug on the store security camera. So that was how she proved that she bought the jug. Now, this is when I get nervous and I pray that I have answered all the questions correctly. First of all, I'm just going to make sure I have an answer for all of them. Yes, I'm happy. Remember, if this was the actual test, I would have those 10 minutes to transfer anything I scribbled down on my question paper onto my answer paper. Obviously, with the GRAID platform, it's a different platform for practice, but let's check. Okay. I'm going to go next, and hopefully that will save my answers. Oops, what's happening here? Okay, for some reason I can't seem to confirm my answers at the moment, but I can tell you that if I were to check the written, what I'll do is I'll check from the written answers that I have in front of me. None. 1 is correct. 23 is correct. Customer is indeed correct. 2 minutes was the correct answer. A service desk she liked shopping. 28, 28, 2 years. 29, buy water, and then found a picture. So all of our answers are correct. So that's the end of this section for the listening webinar this time. What I want to do is talk about the schedule again, just to repeat that. So I'm going to go back to my little digital whiteboard. Let's have a look. Okay, we'll clear this. So what I'm going to do here is tell you again that on Tuesday, which is May the 5th, there is a free webinar. It's going to be for listening 4, right? So this is the free webinar for anyone who wants to watch. We're going to do the last section of this particular listening practice. Then on Thursday, which is May the 7th, there is a free webinar for GRAID subscribers. I'm going to need to make this box a little bigger. Then on Sunday, what date is Sunday? So the next Sunday, I'm not going to put the date. That is the replay, right? So again, this Tuesday, I'm going to, for anyone who wants to watch, we're going to do the last section of this particular listening practice. Then on Thursday, for all grade.com subscribers, there'll be a new webinar, something different. It won't be listening. That will be advertised on the GRAID site. And then every Sunday, again, for anybody who wants to watch, all of the webinars that I've done during lockdown, there'll be 18 of them, and they will be replayed on Sunday. And again, the time's always the same, 1:30 Indian Standard Time for all of these webinars. And then if you do watch the replay, there'll be somebody who can take your questions and answer those live, right? So I hope this has been helpful. And more importantly, I hope wherever you are, I hope that you're very safe. And I look forward to doing section 4 of this listening test and reaching out again to you on Tuesday. Take care.